Now, a lot of people quote Paul in that he says that he was able to be content in every circumstance. But how is that? How is that we're able to be content no matter what's going on in our life and no matter what our circumstances look like? And that is whenever we realize that it's not as much about us as we thought it was. And I think a lot of times, especially in the modern gospel, we twist either the blessings of God or our own desires of piousness and what we think holiness is, and we turn that into something that we make about ourselves, whether that's prosperity gospel. The extreme of prosperity gospel, which is, that you're not with God unless you're blessed, or if it's, vows of poverty and stuff like that. Now, obviously, like if God actually calls you to those things, great. But those are on an individual level, as far as I'm concerned. And because it's not about us, it's not about so much time has been spent on what is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to live my life? When if you really, really, really think about it and you really look at the Bible and you really look at everything that God has done, it's not about our purpose. It's about his purpose. We quote John 3:16 so much and we make it about us. But it says, for God so loved the world. Yes, we are included in the world, but it did not say for God so loved each individual as so much as we like to make it out to be. Because so many times in the Bible, God says, for the sake of my name, for the sake of my name in the earth, for the sake of what I'm doing in the earth, here's what I'm going to do. And he literally tells Israel, this isn't for you. Sometimes, he says like, this is not because of you, this is because of me and because of what I am going to do in the earth. And like so many times we make these like ideas of, well, God said it and it's going to happen. And yes, it may happen, but it doesn't always have to include you. That's a really hard thing to take sometimes, but like God made a promise to Israel. And yes, he did fulfill that promise, but he skipped an entire generation. He skipped an entire 40 years of people living and dying. And that's a humbling thing to think about, but it's also a freeing thing. I don't want to make this, gloom and doom, but it's also a freeing thing whenever you realize that your life doesn't have to look a certain way based on what other people have told you. It doesn't have to be a certain laid out plan that you think that your life is going to be. Take for instance David. Okay, yes, he had this promise for God. He was anointed as king when he was young. Okay. And so he goes about his life, ends up, in the king's palace, playing instruments for the king. And one would think, oh, this is a natural progression that David gets to learn from the king, play for the king, and eventually he'll be king himself. And what ends up happening? He ends up like almost getting killed by the king that naturally in our natural minds, we would think that he would, be mentored by, and has to run from him and ends up at the gates of his enemies, like foaming at the mouth, like having to act like a madman. Now, most of us in our life would think, well, God, what have I done wrong? God, you've had this promise for me that I was going to be king one day, and here I am running from an entire nation and looking like a rebel because he literally led a band of rebels at one point. The displaced men who were with him, but God brought about what he was going to bring about in the way that he was going to bring it about because of the way things needed to happen. And that's what we need to realize in our lives is that, yes, God is going to bring about what he needs to bring about, but we need to let him be God, let him do it the way that he's going to do it, and just be okay with the fact that we get to be with him. And that's going to be illustrated in the Bible through the stories that are told and through the way things happen. But especially, more specifically, you can look at Jeremiah 9:23 and 24. Thus says the Lord, It's about all the destruction and stuff that's going to happen. Thus says the Lord, let not the wise and skillful person glory and boast in his wisdom and skill. Let not the mighty and powerful person glory and boast in his strength and power. Let not the person who is rich glory and boast in his riches. But let him who glories glory in this, that he understands and knows me, that I am the Lord, who practices loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth. For in these things I delight, says the Lord. And even in Psalms 37, verse 3, I'm reading from the Amplified, by the way. Trust in the Lord and do good, so you shall dwell in the land and feed surely on his faithfulness, and truly you shall be fed. I feel like this is something that a lot of people are going to have to put in their hearts for the rest of their lives, really, is to lean on him and to lean on knowing him, because that's our goal, right? Is to know him, not necessarily to do stuff. Because once we're doing stuff, then our focus is on the doing and not on who we're with and the person who is with us. So delight yourself also in the Lord, and he will give you the desires and secret petitions of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust, lean on, rely on, and be confident also in him, and he will bring it to pass. And he will make your uprightness and right standing with God go forth as the light, and your justice and right as the shining of the noonday. Be still and rest in the Lord. Wait for him and patiently lean yourself upon him. Fret not yourself because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked devices to pass. So, whenever we look at the book of Hebrews, it talks about, that Israel did not enter the rest of God. And this is what it's talking about, is leaning on God and entering his rest and entering everything that he has for you. It's not about how your life turns out as far as what happens on the earth. It's about how your life turns out as far as who you are with him. Whenever Jesus talks about he's talking and he says, that he's going to turn people away, and they say, oh, I did all these things. Well, they did all these things, but the statement he says is, I never knew you. And that's what it's all about. It's about knowing him. Let him who boast in this, that he knows the Lord. So that's the biggest thing that I want you guys to take from this year and into next year and into the rest of your life, is something that I really feel like the Lord is pushing right now, is that it's about knowing him. And he's always inviting you, but like there's this special time right now where he's inviting people into this place of like not just knowing about him and not just doing things, but actually knowing him. Because I feel like there was a season where people focused on, well, at least in my life, people focused on doing. They focused on, first of all, there was the purpose-driven life, like way back when, like, what's my purpose? Well, our purpose is to be with the Lord, first of all, okay? And then people focused on, okay, so if this is my purpose, then what do I got to do? And so then we focused on doing things. So we focused on, okay, well, you got to do all these things when out of your heart of knowing is the doing that happens. And there goes my secondary light. That's fine. Out of your purpose of knowing is the doing. And it's because you know him and because you love him, because you're with him, that's when the doing and the being and all that kind of stuff happens. But it's just because of who you're around. And it's because his nature becomes yours. It changes your heart. It changes your mind. It changes your life. Everything that he is becomes who you are because you are with him. And that's the biggest thing that I wanted to get across to you guys, is don't worry about all the other things, because once you know him, all the other things won't matter at all. It won't matter whether you're rich or poor, or whether you are well known, or whether you sit in a closet and pray all day. None of those things will matter either way. I think so many times people think about, well, there's the people who want to be rich and famous, and then there's people who want to sit in their closet and pray all the time. And either way, doesn't matter, because as long as you know the Lord, whatever happens in your life is going to happen because of him. And where he has you, you'll be happy with it because you'll be with him. So that's what I want you to take throughout this. And I want you guys to be blessed in that way, that you know him. And I will talk to you later.